Shalom Aleichem.
Okay, I think we can start. Today is a very special day. Today is the ההילולא of the Rambam, which is 817 years ago. We know how much the Rebbe had very much used up that day to encourage that everybody should be mitzchazek b'limud Rambam hayomi in whichever way. And I just wanted to, before I introduce Rabbi בערל, today when I was thinking, how will I introduce Rabbi בערל? I remember Rabbi בערל was one of the pioneers in bringing the Rambam shovel lechol nefesh, and I can be a witness to that. And Rabbi בערל will remember the day that we had to run after the Heimansbos, and until it came, we had the Torah on the line, which is still on, but in those days it was completely a different kind of a technology. And I had to pray every night that next morning I would have the one for the next time. I think for the entire year, for the first Mahzor, I think that there was only maybe, Rabbi בערל, I think there was only maybe 2 times that we missed it. And anyway, so for sure, Rabbi.
One second. I muted you by mistake. Just 1 second. You gotta unmute yourself. We don't hear you. Unmute yourself. Open yourself. Yeah.
Oh, you didn't hear me? Okay.
You just said there was only a few times you were open until I muted everybody because there is some other background noise. I had to try.
Okay. Rabbi בערל, I just wanted to tell everybody, first of all, today is the ההילולא of the Rambam, which is a very special, specious day. The Rebbe used very much that day to encourage everybody to mitzchazek b'limud Rambam, and there's many times that the Rebbe actually spoke special siras about it, especially Tov Shinun. And also there's I just wanted to say that when the Rebbe came out with Mivtza Tov Shin Daled Mem, when the Rebbe came out with this Mivtza learning, Rabbi בערל was one of the pioneers to introduce the Rambam. It should be shovel lechol nefesh to be able to understand the Rambam in a way that everybody can understand it. And those days we used to have the Torah on the line. The Torah on the line still goes on, but the technology those days was completely different than we have today. It was answering machines. And I remember in order to make a recording was on cassette tapes, which we had to put in. I remember every night I used to pray that next morning I'll get the cassette for the next day, because Rabbi בעrל was working ahead of time. And sometimes, and Baruch Hashem, for the entire year, I believe, for the first year, until we finally had a complete set, I think maybe 1 or 2 times that we did not have it on the day. So here I would like to introduce Rabbi בעrl, that for 35 years, Mahzor HaRoim is bringing the Rambam for thousands, hundreds of thousands. And I don't know, Rabbi בעrl, how many times, if you just calculate how many people are still listening to your shiurim that you give in the Rambam. There is chus for Rabbim, Yamedle, and Rebbe will help us to Mamshel sein, to turn the voice from the Rebbe, B'teva Nir, V'anig, Rabbi בעrl, b'vakasha.
Yeah, those who remember you used to run over there with the telephone machines in the basement and having to change the cassettes. Yeah, it was a real experience. Okay, so it's a very, every sefer the Rambam is another opportunity that the Rebbe gave us to be machazik and limud Rambam. I just like to introduce with a few small nakudas. So I'm putting on the screen over here just some things. First about the Rambam, and then Sefer Aveda, and then we'll do the סיום. So you have over here in the Toshin Nun base, and the Rebbe spoke about on the Hemshech to Chav Teves. So the Rebbe spoke about how the Rambam lived for 70 years, and it's especially pertinent this year, Shnas HaShivim. The Rebbe's Nasirs from Toshin Yud and Yud Aleph, and the special Indian, so the Rambam hat gelebt Shivim Shana, Yenimation Eseinu B'hem Shivim Shana, it says in the bottom. You look a very interesting footnote over here, which is a point which is also especially pertinent to our days, where the world has health problems, and individuals have health problems, al tiftach peh, and we see over here that the Rebbe spoke about how the Pei Gimel sections, the halachas of Rambam, are nullified 83 different types of illness, which are holistic categories that it speaks about in the Gemara, and learning Rambam is mevatel that. So it's a segula for poshet gesund begashmias. So in Nahara 83 over here, the Rebbe brings down another interesting thing in this regard, make it a little bigger. Seder HaDeiros, the Chidah, about how the Rambam lived 70 years, but he says, but the emissaries, the Rambam lived a little bit less than 70 years. Why? Because his Stalkos was Chav Tevis, and his birthday is Erev Pesach. So from Chav Tevis, the yahrzeit, till he would have reached the 70th birthday, was missing Pei Gimel Yom. For Ula Yesh Leimer says, perhaps we can say, Pei Gimel Yom Elu Nishlmu al de Pei Gimel Halacha Shebesefer Mishnah Torah. That the way he finished off all of these, the remaining, the missing, so to speak, 83 days of his life was through the 83 halachas. It says in the Rambam. So everybody knows how the limb of the Rambam was precious. It's an inyan of Skashrus. They say from Zusha Partizan that once he was learning the Rambam in the morning before davening, somebody came to him and said, Zusha, Nigla before davening. So he says, what's for a Nigla? He says, this is the Rambam Mizkule Skashrus. But the whole thing is Beker, the inyan is Skashrus. And this is a takana, chitas. Chitas is something that the takana from the Frierdiker Rebbe, versteht sich, the Rebbe always kocht in the chitas. But Rambam especially precious to the Rebbe, and to learn it, it's a very, very big union. You have in addition, so we're making today a סיום on Sefer Aveda. So Sefer Aveda also has a special place among all of the Sfarim. We learned in Chassidische Parsha last week, Deira Eir, so the Alter Rebbe says that Arba Yodes, that approximately 4 out of 5 of the Taryag mitzvahs, 80% of the mitzvahs we can't do today. And you have the whole Sefer Aveda, most of Zroyim and Aveda and Korbanis that you cannot do, but we nevertheless see that that learning Sefer Aveda, and especially Aveda, is something which has a special place even in halacha. So you look in Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch right over here. So the Alter Rebbe brings down about in Hilchas Talmud Torah, this is Perek Beis of Hilchas Talmud Torah, about how a person should spend their time in Limud Torah. And the first thing he says is halacha l'maisa. You have to learn in order to be able to fulfill all of the mitzvahs. So that's the first thing. You have to do whatever's negei halacha l'maisa. Then he says if a person has some more time, you should learn the whole Torah Shebaal Peh from beginning to end, start at the beginning, and just go through Babel Yerushalmiyim and Mechilta and Sifra and Sifri and so on and so forth. He has a little more time. And the Rebbe quoted this halacha when he spoke his famous sikha, comparing Chaf and Chaf Dalet Tevis and the kesher between them, and how the Alter Rebbe learns the Rambam as far as Chiyuv Talmud Torah. So he said you should learn the halacha she'ein and tzrichas. You have in the third line over here, af mitzvah she'ein and neigas k'mekadshim u'kiyetz behen. Okay, and it's a velachin, the second paragraph. Af she'ein shozu maspekas limud halacha zelam atalmud lachzol lehem kol kach. So even though you won't be able to learn it from the source like the Alter Rebbe would like you to learn with the reason behind it from the Gemara, at least that. But yesh lasa techila b'seder kodshim. K'mei chacham kol ha'esek b'teiras eila kilu hikrev. That anyone that learns Torah regarding a carbon, it's as if he brought the carbon. So therefore, it's proper, if it's possible for you to do it. Lilmed halachas kol ha'karbanos b'shleimus. V'kol ha'aveda shebamikdash. V'hilchas ha'mikdash v'kol kelev. K'mavor bar heite b'chibar ha'rambam zal b'sefer aveda v'sefer karbanos. And this is the yesod, and the Rebbe, and that's Sicha, and Chav Chav Tevis, where the Rebbe explains how could the Alter Rebbe be saying this? The Alter Rebbe, we know that there's a machlekes rishonim. Do you have to learn the mitzvahs with the reason behind it, which seems to be what the Alter Rebbe is saying against the Rambam, who says you can just give the piskei halachas. And the Rebbe puts together with the whole shita from the Alter Rebbe, because you see right over here it says clear to learn Sefer Aveda, Sefer Karbanis. Later you have some time, so then you learn Tares and Zroyim and the other Chalakim as well. So now we'll go to the actual the actual סיום. So you have over here, this is from the Malchus, but without the Pirushim. Maybe I can make this a bit bigger. Yeah. So this, in the Dvar Malchus print, they used the Ksavya Teman. There's a very long halacha. So Hilchas Me'ila is the last of the sections in Sefer Aveda. It has 8 prakim. The first section of Sefer Aveda is Hilchas Beis HaBechira, also has 8 prakim. And the Rebbe explained that it has to do with Mashiach, because 8, the Kina of Mashiach has 8 nimin, and 8 is higher than Seder Shtalshus. So the Mugadik Sikha, the Rebbe mentions. In any case, so this is the 8th halacha of Perek Ches. Hilchas Me'ila is the end. Roy Laden Lisbeinu b'mishpatei Torah Agdesha. So at the end of each Sefer, the Rambam brings something which is a deeper, more general Heira. And at the end of Sefer Aveda and Sefer Karbanis, the Rambam speaks about Chukim in 2 different ways. And the Rebbe is Makasha both the ways. Many Sikhs, the Rebbe mentioned this very often. So it's proper, a person should be Misbeinen in the laws of the Holy Torah, Leida Seif in Yonak Pikeche, to know the end of the best of his ability to what's the end, how does it apply to one's life. And if you can't find the reason behind it and you don't know the purpose of this mitzvah, you shouldn't treat it lightly. And you shouldn't be tempted to go against Hashem because you don't understand the mitzvah. And you shouldn't think about it just because you can't understand it and you don't know the reasons now. And the Rambam speaking in general about chukim, that chukim in general, we differentiate between chukim and mishpatim. The mishpatim are the laws we understand the reason for them, and chukim are the ones that we don't understand the reason for them. The question is it because they don't have a reason, or they have a reason but it's just beyond our understanding? The Rambam learns here in Mishnah Torah and also Moreh Nevuchim and in Shmeina Prakim that they do have a reason. All the mitzvahs have a reason. The details of each mitzvah maybe don't have a reason, but the general mitzvahs all have a reason. But the chukim are basically beyond our understanding. And Rashi holds not like that, but the Ramban holds like the Rambam, that they do have reasons. If we have time, we'll speak about how this is Al Pi Chassidus. In any case, so the Rambam over here in the end of Sefer Aveda, he speaks about how chukim, even though we don't understand them, and you might not apply yourself so much to them, and you might question them, but that's making a big mistake, and he teaches you how using Hilchas Me'ila. At the end of Sefer Karbanis, which is the end of Hilchas Tmura, so the Rambam goes further and says that even from the chukim, you're required to think into it and derive a lesson from it. And then the Rambam derives a lesson from the end of Hilchas Tmura. And that is the Pashtas, the Yesod for all the Rebbe Sichas on the Rambam, where he brought down Heira and Avedas Hashem from the Rambam Yemi, that the Rebbe did throughout the years after the Takan of the Limud the Rambam, throughout Memhei and further. Okay, line 32. Bore, come and see how strict the Torah was about Me'ila. Me'ila is when you use something which is a consecrated, a holy object, and you use it for a weekday use. So even if it's wood, the lowest things that Rebbe points out, the Rambam took the lowest things possible, pieces of wood or stone or earth or ashes, which doesn't seem to have any use, and you decide it was sanctified, it was used for a holy purpose, and then you want to use it yourself. Once a person, just with their speech, sanctified it and said, for example, I'm donating these stones to the Beis HaMikdash. Niskachu, they become holy. And if you used it for your own personal daily purposes, it's me'ila. You used it, misappropriation, as they call it in English, that you used it for your personal use. Then you have to make carbon meila, all the different pratim we learned in Ilchas Meila. But and even if you did it unintentionally, you still need atonement. So if that's the case for all of these things, mitzvahs, if even some simple stone and earth, and once was called to be used for the sake of Hashem, So how much more the mitzvahs? Shechakak lana kadosh baruch hu, that Hashem, the chukim that Hashem prescribed for us. Al yivat adam behen b'pnei shalei the time, and a person shouldn't rebel against them just because he doesn't know the reason behind them. And he shouldn't ascribe things to Hashem that don't apply. And he shouldn't think about them as they would about daily things. That you have to keep kol chukeisai, and it says chukim before mishpatim. So you have to keep all of the chukim and be very shmartim. You have to be very careful. That you have to, the shmira, being careful about the negative, and the asiyah, to be careful about the positive. You have to do for the chukim like mishpatim. As the Rebbe explains, what do you mean the chukim like mishpatim? That it's pashtim, it's not mishpatim, since a person understands them. So by the nature of a person, he'll have more of a chayas, he'll have more of an enjoyment in the mitzvah, that he understands why it is he's doing them. Whereas when the chukim, he doesn't have, naturally speaking, as much gishmak, the chayas and tainug when he does it. So you have to have gishmak in the chukim like you have in the mishpatim. You do over here, she has a chukim. So the asiyah is that you have to do them, the positive ones. And the shmir, you have to be careful. You don't think that they're inferior in some way to the mishpatim. What's the difference of chukim and mishpatim? The Ram explains mishpatim hema mitzvah shatayim and golu. The tevas has yosem ba'elam hazeh yodua. The mishpatim and the mitzvahs that it's have a revealed reason, and the benefit in performing them in this world is known. The prohibition of theft, murder, honoring your mother and father. So those are mishpatim, those we understand. But chukim ain't a mitzvah shein time and golu. These are the mitzvahs that their reason is not revealed. And you see again, the Rambam says the reason is not revealed. Doesn't mean they have no reason. They have a reason, but it's not revealed to us. So there's different girsois that Rebbe points out over here, whether chakti or chachakti. Vein locha reshus lahaer. And you have no reshus to think. Lahar achreim, yeah. Lahar bohen. You're not allowed to think, to have second thoughts about them. Yitzur shaladim nekva behen, and the yitzur of a person puts up trouble for the person, obstacles. But and the non-Jews of the world, they bother the Yidden regarding them. They ask us questions again. Isser basar chazer, the prohibition of eating pork, basar b'chalav, milk and meat, begel arufa, the decapitated calf, a para aduma, the red heifer, v'sara mishtaleach, and the goat that's sent out to the Eretz Gezeira on Yom Kippur. So how much suffering David HaMelech endured from the heretics and the Nochrim that would bother him and question these chukim. And when they would pursue him with all of their false arguments that they would construct because of their lack of understanding. The more they bothered him, so the more he cleaved to the Torah. From Kapitel Kuf Yutes, that the sheker was that they tried to apply to me, the Zaydim, the people that rebel against Hashem. I keep your laws with all of my heart. And also there it says, that I have faith in all of your mitzvahs, that they chase after me with falsehood. Azreini, Hashem, help me. That's David HaMelech requested Hashem. And Karbanos in general, what is he saying it over here? The Karbanos in general called chukim. That on the Vedas HaKarbanos, the world stands that through performing both the chukim and the mishpatim, so the Yidden, the straightforward people, merit the world to come. And the Torah first commanded us regarding the chukim. Says the pasuk we quoted before, so as chukaisa before mishpatai, and it gives precedence to the chukim over the mishpatim. So over here, the main hera is that you cannot understand the chukim, but you nevertheless have to perform them with the same chayas as you do the mishpatim. The Rebbe mentions often the sichas. You have my mom, the Frierdiker Rebbe also, that the same thing goes vice versa. That there's a maila in the chukim, the maila in the chukim, that it gives us kabbalah seil, that we connect to Hashem just because it's Hashem's ratzon. That's not based on our understanding. It's total nullification to Hashem's will. That's stronger by chukim than it is by mishpatim. So to the mishpatim you have to fulfill with the same kabbalah seil as you have the chukim. It goes vice versa. Now, at the end of Sefer Karbonai, so the Rambam explains that even though the chukim you can't really understand, you have to think into it and derive lessons, even though they're chukim. So here in the end of Aveda, the Rambam doesn't speak about that at all. He brings the lesson because you can't understand it. Then at the end of Karbonis, the end of Hilchas Tmura, the Rambam says that it's an obligation on every person to think about the chukim too and derive lessons as much as you can. So the Rebbe on Arel Nakuta Siches, it's interesting because the end of the whole entire Shabbat, the whole end of Sefer Vayikra is about Karbonis, is the union of Tmura. And you have in Lakuta Siches, and so put in a word for look at Project Lakuta Siches, they're doing fundraising now, and they're starting a new Yud Shvat, starting again from the beginning. So from Lakuta Siches, Sefer Vayikra, so the last Chelek, actually I have one after that, made a mistake there. But in Chelek Lamed Beis, the last Sicha and the whole Chelek Lamed Beis compares the end of Aveda and the end of Tmura. And that Sicha, so that Chelek, it's earlier actually, it's page 15, Chelek Lamed Beis. So the Rebbe compares why is it that this lesson is the end of Sefer Aveda and that lesson is the end of Sefer Karbonis. What's the difference Sefer Aveda, Sefer Karbonis? The Sefer Aveda is in general, it's Karbonis Tzibur. Where it's Karbonis gets down to Karbonis Yochid, Sefer Karbonis. It's individual Karbonis, it's more beprotius. So therefore, when it comes Sefer Aveda, we're talking about Avedas Hashem, so it speaks about the chukim themselves. That you do it mitzad the chok shebedavar, and you give it over to the Eibishter in a way like a Eved. The Sefer Aveda. Mashenkin Sefer Karbonis gets down to the pratim and on the individual level. So then you have to apply it to yourself. So there, from the end of Sefer Tmura, he gives that lesson. Brich Rachmana Desayin Nigmer Sefer Shmini Bezer Shindal Yud Minyan Parakim Shal Sefer Zeh Chamisha Tishim Parakim, 95 Parakim. That's more than any other Sefer of the 14th form of Ramim. Was based by Bachir Shmeina Parakim, Milchas Klein Mikdash Asara Parakim, Milchas Beis Mikdash Tisha Parakim, Milchas Tesura Mizbech Shiva Parakim, Milchas Maisa Karbonis Tisha Asa Parakim, Milchas Tmidim Asaf and Asara Parakim, Milchas Pesul Mikdashim Tisha Asa Parakim, Milchas Avedas Yom Kippur and Chamisha Parakim, Milchas Mila Shmeina Parakim. And even in the Taryag Mitzvahs, we see that there's more mitzvahs over here than in any other, or more than 100 mitzvahs out of the Taryag Mitzvahs. Before we start the next sefer, I just want to point out one interesting thing over here, different girsois. When you look at the, excuse me, I pressed the wrong button here. No share. So the standard print of the Rambam, you see over here, a standard print of the Rambam. This is the standard print. So it says over here, Amra Chachamim, 3 lines from the bottom here. Amra Chachamim shebishvil avedas hakarbonis elam emet. This is speaking about the beginning of Pirkei Avos, Ashleish Amudim elam emet al Teira Aveda al Gemilos Chasodim. So the Teira is one, Aveda is the second one, Gemilos Chasodim. So it's one of the 3 that the Teira stands on. You look at the regular girsa, it says Amra Chacham shebishvil avedas hakarbonis elam emet. That's the standard girsa that it stands on Aveda, which seems a little bit strange because it doesn't stand only on Aveda; it's on the other 2 as well. You take a look in the Ksav Yad Teiman, which is generally considered to be the more accurate girsa. Lefi Chachamra Chachamim she'af al Avedas hakarbonos elam emet. That also, in addition, in other words, there's also Teira and Gemilos Chasadim she'af. That af al Avedas hakarbonos elam emet. So you see that the proper gears over here, the Ksav Yad Teiman, it has af al Avedas also the Kapach's gear. So this is his. That af al Avedas hakarbonos, that's also included. That in order that the world should be emet, you need Teira and Gemilos Chasadim, and also Aveda. And just to point out, I'm sure everybody knows this famous sicha from the Indian of af from Vayigash Tavshin Nun Aleph, where the Rebbe spoke about at length about the inyan of Af. It also has to do with last week's Parsha. The Rebbe says over here, by Hi Yankiv, Yaakov Avinu, Lameis, Mazara B'chayim, Af, Hu B'chayim. The Rebbe points out over here is inyan of Af, that the inyan of Af is anger. That's the negative meaning of Af, but the positive meaning of Af is when that's transformed to Kedusha. And this is the famous order 94, and that Sikha over here about that Af is Pei Aleph, Rosh Hashanah Plois Areno. And this is all derech, the Rebbe says on the bottom, like the Rosh Hashanah of that year that would said, the Shnas Niflois Areno, Tavshin and Aleph, all derech zeh is the inyan from Plos Arenos. You see, the Rebbe years ahead gave us already preparation for this year. So to begin, B'Shem Hashem Kei Leilam, the Rambam begins. This is again, they only have this in the Ksav Yad Teiman, but the Rambam begins each of the 14 books with this pasuk B'Shem Hashem Kei Leilam, Avram Avinu's cry to the world. The only one he doesn't begin is Sefer Amada because he began the whole Mishnah Torah. Right at the beginning he says B'Shem Hashem Kei Leilam, so that included Sefer Amada. The Rambam begins each Sefer with a pasuk Ticham Tfilasik Teres Lafanecha Masas Kapai Minchas Orev. So this is my tefillas should be like incense before you, and when I lift up my hand should be like a sweet korban mincha. Sefer Shiv, who Sefer Karbones. So the 9th of the 14th Svarim, the Sefer Karbones, all of Sheish, has 6 sections. Zeus Yidun, Elchus Korban Pesach, Elchus Chagiga, Elchus Becheres. All those are Korban Yochid. And then you have Hilchos Pesach, everybody brings Chagiga also, Hilchos Becheres, you have a Becher you bring. Hilchos Shagages, person did something B'Shegeg, Korban Yochid, but not always the person have to bring it. Hilchos Mechusar Kapara, person that needs to bring a korban for a Kapara, Hilchos Tmura. And all of those don't necessarily have to happen. Hilchos Korban Pesach seems to be the minig is that people don't read when they start, when they make a siyum and they start, people don't read this introductory section over here, not the halachas and not the mitzvahs. But over here at Zoom, everybody can hang up. If they don't want to listen, they can all hang up. We already started Hilchos Korban Pesach. We already started the Sefer. So that's, if it's a whole gathering and people are sitting around a table, it's a little bit embarrassing. You're going to get up and leave. It's a little bit more difficult. But over here, whatever doesn't want. So therefore, in the proper way, this is all included in the more shir Hilchos Korban Pesach. Yesh b'chol sheishes mitzvahs, arba mitzvahs aseh, shtei mitzvahs leisaseh, v'zeh protim. So there are 16 mitzvahs, 4 positive and 12 negative. For lishchet Pesach bezmaneh and beishul lizbeach esa ala chametz. You have to shech the korban Pesach in the proper time, and you can't shech it when there's still chametz in your possession, or the possession of one of the people in your chabura. Shalei tolin emurav. You cannot leave the fats that are supposed to be burned. You can't leave it overnight. Lishchet Pesach sheni. You have to shech the Pesach sheni. Lechol b'sar Pesach hamatzu mora b'leil chamisha aser. And you have to eat the meat of korban Pesach with matzah mreidim on the night of the 15th. Many of the Meinei mitzvahs argue with the Rambam. Why does he count Aleph and Hey as 2 mitzvahs? L'chora, shechting and eating it usually go together. By korban chata, shechting and eating it is all part of the same mitzvah. So that you have a whole arichas. The Rebbe explains Shittas Rambam and Kutei Sichos Chelik Tazayin Parshas Bei. Second Sicha, whole arichas why Rambam counts it as 2 separate mitzvahs. Lechol b'sar Pesach sheni al matzah mor b'leil chamisha asel l'chedesh hasheni. To eat the meat of the Pesach Sheni in the proper time. Shlei yachal nom b'vushla. Can't eat the korban Pesach undercooked or boiled. Has to be broiled. Shlei yitzim b'sar Pesach chutz l'chabura. You cannot take the meat outside the group that's eating it. Shlei lechal mimenu meshumad. That's somebody that's an apocatus can't eat it. Or nachri shlei yachal mimenu l'teisha v'sachar, and somebody who is only a resident by you cannot eat it. An uncircumcised person can't eat it. You can't break any of the bones of the korban Pesach. Neither the Pesach Sheni. You can't break the bones of the Pesach Sheni either. You can't leave it over to the next morning. Same thing applies to Pesach Sheni. And the chagiga that's eaten together with the korban Pesach, that you can eat the second day. You can't leave it for the second day, but you can't leave it for the third day. We'll learn at least the first halacha. So it's one of the 613 mitzvahs to shech the korban Pesach on the 14th of Nisan after midday. And it has to be a sheep or a goat, a male within the first year of its life, both men and women are obligated in Korban Pesach. And that's it. Hadar and Allah, and we begin the new Sefer from the Rambam. Yashar Keyach, Shmulik, for arranging everything. Everybody should have a great success. Just like to point out a resource, a new resource I became aware of today. There's a website called rambam.today, RAMBAM.today, as in yesterday, today, TODAY, and there's all different sorts of shiurim in the one perek and 3 prakim, English and other languages, French, Spanish, and Russian, and printed materials. There's a excellent shir every day, and all the sichos from the Rebbe on the shir Rambam of that day. So it's a very good resource. Okay.
Continue doing this efforts of especially the Rambam, which I think I can say, Rabbi Bell, as far as I'm concerned, this is something because you're one of the pioneers, like I said before. So it's unbelievable. So the Rebbe help.
I'll tell you something interesting. I was by the Fabrengen when the Rebbe first announced. I remember the Rebbe gave a little smile. The Rebbe gave a little smile, and they said, "Hota Hatzah." He has a suggestion. Now I remember after Fabrengen, people know, nobody that I knew anyway had ever done such a thing before. We had no idea to learn the whole Rambam in a year. You think everybody's going to have to quit their job and it's going to take 10 hours a day. You have to learn the chveis, 80 prakim a day. People didn't have an idea really, at least most of the people I spoke to, what exactly that meant until they sat down and counted it up and said, 3 prakim, okay, it's something which is possible. So when I was in Buffalo that year, and that's when I started, and then the Rebbe said that for the people that can't learn it, they can learn Sefer HaMitzvahs, and that especially people can't learn Lashon Kodesh, so therefore it applies Sefer HaMitzvahs, and it's written in Arabic. It was written for the vernacular, for the women, the children that can't learn it in Lashon Kodesh. Meanwhile, the Sefer HaMitzvahs was also in Lashon Kodesh, basically, or in Arabic, and the English was very, very difficult to read, and it was not in the Seder. So that's when I started making the tapes and Sefer HaMitzvahs. And if you listen closely, some of the tapes, you'll hear banging in the background because we were building a mikveh. And my office where I was recording was right above, and you hear the hacking out the cement over there in the background by so many of the tapes. But that was the way it was. Anyway, and the Rebbe once said the learning all of these in Yonim, there's also part of it, learning in Yonim, Mashiach and Geula, we should know what to do. When it comes, Meir of Yameinu will be tonight, tomorrow we'll have to bring a carbon tummy, we'll know what to do, we'll learn Sefer Aveda. Okay, Shmulik, and all them Batzloch Rabba. All too.
Make me bake a horse because I have to get the recording.
Yeah, okay. Is that Shmulik Posner there? Oh, he hung up. Missed him. Okay, shame. Okay, sei gesund.